This video is for geometry class. These are both the notes and the homework, number 45. So the notes are that we're going to do a few of these problems together, and then your homework is to finish this worksheet out. So we're still working with parallel and perpendicular lines, the point slope form of a line, and then we're also always trying to write them back into their slope intercept form. To remind you that the slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. This is slope intercept form. The point slope form of a line is y minus k equals m times x minus h. When you've been given a point hk and a slope of m. So that's the point slope form of a line. This is the slope intercept form of a line. When we simplify and solve for y in this form, we get the slope intercept form. So to do these problems, it starts off that we need to use the point slope form of a line. The formula says we're going to do y minus the y value, which is 3. It's going to equal the slope, -2, times x minus the x value of the point, which is 0. In this particular problem, we end up with y minus 3 equals, the -2 gets distributed to the x. There isn't anything with the 0, so we end up with -2x. And the last step here is to add 3 to both sides of the equation. And we end up with the equation y equals -2x plus 3, which is the slope intercept form of a line that goes through that point and has the point 0, 3, and has the slope -2. So now you need to practice by doing the next two problems in the same fashion. We're going to do problem number 4. In this one, we're going to write it with the point slope form of a line, but we don't have the slope. So for step number 1 is to find the slope. To find slope, we subtract our y's. So we have -5 minus the 3 over the x, which is -3, minus 1. And this gives us a slope. -5 minus 3 is -8. -3 and -1 is -4, which that simplifies to 2. So there's my slope. And now we get to choose one of these points. And it makes no difference which point to use. I usually have said before, I pick the one that has the smallest numbers, if that's what I would try. So I like this point here, 1 and 3. But you could use -3 and 5. It won't make any difference. I'm going to use this one, though, 1 and 3. So I've got y minus 3 equals the slope 2 times x minus 1. We're going to distribute that 2. So now we've got point slope form of a line. Distributing the 2, we end up with y minus 3 equals 2x minus 2. We add 3 to both sides to solve for y, and we get that y equals 2x plus 1. And there is the equation of the line in slope intercept form of a line. Then you're going to do problems 5 and 6. Number 7, it says write an equation of a line that is parallel to this line here. Oh, we're not doing number 7, that's why it's circled. You're going to do that one on your own. This one here, number 8, is the one we're going to do together. It's the same concept. We're going to do an equation of a line that's parallel to the given line and passes through this point. So since it's parallel, I know it has exactly the same slope as this given line. So for this problem, I need to find the slope. So I'm going to do some work. I'm going to do right here. I'm going to do my little work here. To solve this, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And I end up with 5y equals -2x plus 15. I'm going to divide everything, not both sides, but every single term by 5. And we end up with y equals -2/5 x plus 3. Here is the slope. So for this problem here, I want a slope of -2/5. And I have the point -10, 1. So I'm going to have y minus 1 equals the slope -2/5 times x minus this -10. So when I subtract a -10, it becomes x plus 10. we're going to distribute negative 2/5. When we do that, I end up with, I'm going to have to write it down below here, y minus 1 equals negative 2/5 x. Negative 2/5 times positive 10 is negative. The 5 goes into the 10 twice, times 2 is 4. And the last step would be to add 1 to both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to write it over here. When I add 1 to both sides, we end up with y equals, and we still have negative 2/5 x. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3, and there is the equation of the line. Okay, so we've done that problem. You're going to need to do problem number 7, which is the same idea. Remember that parallel means same slope, and that's what we did here. We found the slope, and we used that slope. Okay. You're also going to do problem number 9 that also has parallel in it. But number 10, which you're going to do, is this perpendicular. The perpendicular slope. Well, let's do problem number 11, which also is perpendicular. And the method I'm going to use for number 11, you're going to use in both 10 and 12. And that is step number 1 is to find the slope. So I'm going to do this over here. Find the slope of this line. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. And that's going to give me 6y equals negative 5x plus 18. Divide everything by 6. And I end up with y equals negative 5/6 x plus 3. Here is the slope. So I'm going to write this over here, that the slope of that line is negative 5/6. But if that's the slope, I don't want the same slope. Since it's perpendicular, I want the perpendicular slope, which says if this is negative, then this one's going to be positive. I'll write a little plus. We don't have to write it, but I'll do that to make sure we see that this one's negative, this one's going to be positive. And then we flip this. Instead of 5/6, we're going to write 6/5. And this is the slope we're going to need to use along with that point. So using the point slope form of a line, y minus 7 equals the new slope, the perpendicular slope, 6/5 times x minus 10. We're going to distribute 6/5 to both of those, and we have y minus 7 equals 6/5 x minus, because a plus times a positive times a negative is still negative. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 6 is 12. Now, we haven't finished it. We're going to need to add 7 to both sides. So I am adding 7, and I'm adding 7 to both sides of that equation. And we end up with y equals 6/5 x, and negative 12 and positive 7 is negative 5. And therefore, we have the equation right here, which is y equals 6/5 x minus 5. So again, I found the slope of this line, and then I found the perpendicular slope, which is the opposite reciprocal, used that slope with the point and wrote the equation of the line. You're going to do problems 10 and 12 in the same fashion. Last here we have 2 problems here, 13 and 14. Are somewhat the same idea, but I'm only going to do one of them. I'm going to do problem number 13, and you're going to do problem number 14. It says that we have a segment, CD, and it's formed by these 2 points. Then there is a line T that is a perpendicular bisector. Remember that to be a bisector, it means it cuts it in half, so we need to find the midpoint of CD. And to do that, we take our x's, 7 and negative 5, and add them. 7 plus negative 5, which just looks like 7 minus 5, and divide that by 2. And we take our y's, 9 and 5, and add those, 9 plus 5, and we divide them by 2. Dividing by 2 is the way to find the halfway point. Well, this is going to equal 1, 7. Okay, so now we have a point. The next thing we need to do is we need to find the slope. So we're going to find the CD, the segment CD has the slope that equals, we're going to subtract our y's, 5 minus 9, and then we're going to subtract our x's, 7 minus negative 5, 7 minus negative 5. So remember, since it was a negative, and we're subtracting, it becomes addition. And this simplifies to negative 1/3. This is the slope. We want the perpendicular slope. This is the key here. This is the slope that says that we want perpendicular bisector. We know a point, that's the bisector. The midpoint is where it goes through. And we need the perpendicular slope. Since this is negative, the perpendicular slope is positive. And instead of 1/3, it's going to be 3/1, which is just 3. So now we know the slope is 3. So this is the information we're going to use. We're going to use that point and that slope to write the equation of the line, which means we're going to have y minus 7 equals the slope 3 times x minus the 1 from that midpoint. Distribute the 3, and we have y minus 7 equals 3x minus 3. We're going to add 7 to both sides, and we end up with y equals 3x plus 4. And this is the equation of the perpendicular bisector that goes through this segment CD. So this is, again, were the notes and the homework. The notes were the problems we did together. So you've written those down. And your homework is to finish up this worksheet.